What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Average American Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Tate, the podcast for the Average American by the Average American. Today, we are going to take a look at one of the most recent interviews that Tucker did. This guy, Alex Bruesewitz, I think was his name. He's Trump's social media manager. And he obviously titles it a little dragging, Trump's social media advisor reveals all. Newsflash, he doesn't. He doesn't reveal all. He actually doesn't reveal anything, except that he's good at the manipulation. He's good at and I'll talk about it as he does it, because there's a couple of times where I see it. And that, he's here to run cover for the administration. And you would, if they're paying your salary, right? Like, you would defend your boss because he's paying your salary to some degree if you liked him. Well, if you hated your job and you hated your boss, that's a different situation. I don't blame you there, and maybe you wouldn't say positive things about him. But this is obviously different. Politics are significantly different than the day-to-day life. But enough of that. I am going to go ahead and full screen us and get us going.
Alex Bruesewitz, thank you for doing this. Very nice of you to do this. So here's my perception. Here's the overview. So we're in this war. Obviously, I disapprove. Whatever. I've said that many times. Then the president decides we're getting out, and the vice president articulates how and why. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't be more supportive of that. I was thrilled by that. Thank God. And then all of a sudden, there is this just flurry of attacks on the president, but mostly on the vice president, from people who don't have a alternative plan, but basically just calling the vice president to some extent the president names. It seemed to me, as an outsider, less fluent on the internet than you are, that this is coordinated. Like, what is this? What are we looking at?
Well, it's a great observation. I believe that there definitely is a coordinated effort to put pressure on the president and the administration to continue the conflict in Iran. And I believe that there is potentially even foreign influence involved, and not just from one country. So I think it's definitely a coordinated effort. You're seeing a lot of these voices, they kind of move as a pocket. They talk about a lot of the similar issues. They oftentimes do the similar paid media campaigns around other related topics. And there's also evidence of millions and millions and millions of dollars flowing to certain right-wing influencer marketing companies from countries who might benefit from a prolonged conflict. So I believe there's definitely a coordinated effort. Similarly, right after the war was about to end, or I guess the MOU was coming out,
Yes.
a lot of the anti-war voices were also spreading misinformation about the deal.
All right. So this was the first 2-ish minutes of the thing. And I listened to this on audio first. And then I came back and I've watched through the parts I remembered being important to me in the moment when I was listening to it and thinking, this guy's just a hack, like a con man. Just, I don't believe the shit he says. And right here, he's talking about, war propaganda, and, the anti-war voices are coming out and capitulating and or saying we're capitulating, which is exactly what everything reported, whether it was Fox News or it was anything like that. Whatever major media source you want to talk about, mainstream, they were all saying the same thing. And I did a video on it with Newsweek, who I read off the 14 points. And so clearly this guy's just coming out to run cover. That's what it feels like, at least in the first 2 minutes. I just feel the disingenuous nature of this guy. And I get it. He's a decent looking guy, looks relatable, seems normal. Somebody you could have a drink with, a coffee with, probably have a conversation where you agree on some things and disagree, which he does with Tucker here. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. I just always think that little intro part is very important. We're going to skip ahead here to the Epstein cover-up stuff. There might be some Marjorie Green in here, but we don't really care about that.
And guys like Thomas Massey,
It's perfect.
like to take the credit for the release of the Epstein files. But during 4 years of Joe Biden, the Biden Department of Justice was sitting on these files. How many times did Massey tweet about Epstein? 0. Not a single time for 4 years of Biden. And so a lot of people see, some of these guys now, and Massey's never liked the president. Like Trump endorsing against Massey in this election isn't a response to him being critical of Epstein. Trump endorsed against Massey in 2020. Trump's never liked Massey. And, he's an acquired taste. Not everybody likes Thomas Massey.
Right.
But it wasn't a response. He didn't lash out at Massey and endorse this guy against him because of the Epstein files. He's never liked Massey. Massey's always been a thorn in some capacity. And so there was no cover up. And I think people who suggest that there was a cover up are not being honest.
So already we know the first 2 minutes you can tell he's a con man. So him and Tucker talked about Marjorie previously. If you want to watch this, go to Tucker's YouTube. It's right up there. It's easy to find. Alex Bruesewitz, Trump advisor, reveals all. But, this guy's just so far off base. He's just making shit up. I mean, if you've paid any attention at all, $36 million spent in a primary. The most ever in any primary for either party ever. Okay, so first off, that's crazy. Secondly, saying that it's not a retaliation for the release of the Epstein files and that Trump was the one who got the Epstein files released. No, Trump tried to bury the fucking Epstein files. It's like this guy, he's just using the Trump strategy. He just does it a little bit more, with a little bit more couth, if you will. He's a little easier on he doesn't speak in the absolutisms that Trump does. So you can take what he says with a grain of salt and not feel as though he's forcing you into a corner where it's either this or nothing. He does leave slight nuance for it, but he's clearly denying that. And then talking about Trump and Massey not running or not agreeing, it could be because Massey knew that Trump was a democratic socialist who didn't give a shit about the American people. And, maybe that's the thing. I don't know. But Thomas Massey has been significantly more truthful and reliable than Trump has been in his second term, and even towards the end of his first term. And so you've got this guy shitting on Massey because Massey brought those to light, and then wants to try to say Trump was the reason for it when Trump tried to bury it. Trump didn't want to talk about it. Trump told Marjorie Taylor Greene, who he was just disagreeing with and bad-mouthing almost, that he didn't want to release the files because it would hurt his friends. And so Trump had to be forced, the House of Representatives had to be coerced into signing a bill into law about the Epstein cover-up. And I mean, we could go into it. You've seen it, the influencer stuff, the folders from Pam Bondi, I have a bunch of videos and documents and all that stuff. And then they fired Pam Bondi, brought in Todd Blanche, and Todd Blanche said, we're not going to give you any more Epstein stuff. And I wonder why. It's a law, by the way. It's a law that Congress signed in. So if there was no Epstein cover-up, if there was no problem, if Trump was the reason we got 3.5 million, why aren't we getting the other 3 million or so files that are related to Epstein? Why is Todd Blanche, the new attorney general, coming out and saying you're not getting anything else? So I just watched this and I just thought, man, this guy is so full of shit. It's crazy. It's crazy how full of shit this fucking guy is. But all right,
Could you disagree with the messaging rollout, the media?
On to what I thought was the next important point here. By the way, I think this is a really good interview as far as you could see what kind of coverage Trump admin is trying to run. If you really want to go watch it, sometimes I struggle to watch some of these interviews with these guys. This one was more for the satire of it, but either way.
Certainly, you can't punish people for something they didn't do.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. That's why segregation is wrong. That's why the anti-white racism that dominates American life is wrong. That's why anti-Semitism is wrong. That's why any worldview that punishes people who didn't commit a crime is always and everywhere wrong. And that would include attacking people's families if they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
Anyway.
That's why also, the blanket like Jew haters. There's people who are critical of Israel, and then there's people who like tweet things like totally anti-Jew things. I think the anti-Jew, the Jews control everything crowd, I think they are not the brightest as well.
Yeah, look, attacking people for things they didn't do is wrong, period. I would like this administration to take the anti-white stuff seriously and stop lecturing me, telling me that anti-Semitism is the biggest problem in America. It's not. You have a much tougher time getting into the Ivy Leagues. You would not know this from the behavior of the Justice Department if you're white than if you're Jewish. So that's a fact. It's provable. These numbers came out in court. And like, it's unfashionable to say that. I don't care. And by the way, if Jews or blacks or Filipinos or anybody was being discriminated in the way that whites are being discriminated against, I would be opposed to it vocally, and I'm opposed to it.
Well, if you look at a lot of the job creation in our country, a lot of the new jobs have gone to natural-born white Americans in the Trump presidency.
Tucker goes on to say he doesn't have the numbers in front of him, but this guy just drives me crazy with this as I'm rewatching the interview. It's like they'll have good conversational moments, whether I agree or disagree with his opinions. The ebb and flow of the conversation is fine, and there are disagreements and obviously agreements and parts where, in some of this interview, I could tell that this is a friend of Tucker's, as he says in the interview. And that's my biggest gripe with Tucker, I think, when listening to him, is that, like, I don't give a shit if you're my friend. Like, if you say something absolutely ridiculous, like if this guy was my friend and he tried to say all that shit about Thomas Massey, and I just I'm just going to bring up 4 or 5 points that are 100 pounds, I'm going to come at you. Like, I don't have a problem with that. And if you can't be my friend afterwards, after I prove you wrong, then that's on you, not on me. And so that is some of what I have a problem with Tucker. But he is right here about this weird fucking shit with the anti-Semitism and the Jew hate. And listen, I'm not arguing the point that Jew hate is unwarranted in certain situations. But let's be realistic. If you go and look through our society, there is a disproportionate amount of successful Jewish individuals. Now, does that attest to the fact that Jewish people are both innovative and motivated? Probably, yes. That speaks a lot to their character as a people. They're resilient. I mean, obviously the Holocaust was a real thing. We can debate on the number of people that were killed and whether or not you think that's significant. But regardless, it was a thing where they got persecuted in a place for, whether you think it was justified or unjustified, doesn't matter. I'm not sure you could ever argue that a justification for a mass genocide of people, but there are some individuals out there who think that it may have been the correct course of action. Obviously, I don't think that that's like a high IQ individual. I do think there is some nuance around that conversation, but that's not what we're here for. He is correct, though, that the anti-Semitism stuff is absolutely crazy. And he tries to push back and say, is that really, I don't think that's the big, and it's like, what are you talking about? Florida has anti-Semitic speech laws. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis went to Israel to sign a bill in Israel. What the fuck is that? There's several states, especially Republican states, that are very much tied to Israel. And Tom Cotton is trying to push through this bill that associates our militaries together, essentially. They will integrate in such a way that is detrimental to the American people. We'll say that at the very least. I don't know every detail of it, but I do understand that it's shared intelligence, shared military strategies, shared military tactics. And I just think that that's the problem. That's a huge problem with anybody. George Washington, one of the founders of the country, the leader of the, national army that we had during the American Revolution, said that we should not favor any one country. And I think clearly we're seeing the reason he said something like that. So I thought that was interesting. And then one more thing here I have. I think it was here, yes. We're going to go there.
I must say I've noticed that every Salem media property that I'm aware of has the same view. More war is good. I'm an anti-Semite. Both those are two lies, by the way. I'm not an anti-Semite, and war is not good. You're an anti-Semite. It's like they all have the same view. Now, maybe it's just that every Salem host or influencer or whatever they're calling themselves is like crazy. in exactly the same way, but maybe there's more to it than that.
Maybe. And a lot of these same influencers have been, organized against you for the last year, consistently against you for the last year. A lot of these, there's one account, for example, named Yale Jacoby. I'm not sure, you probably have never heard of this kid, but all he does every day is he tweets about you. The only time I see any of your clips are on the accounts of people attacking you.
I just remember holding my head being like, how are we so reactive?
Really?
I don't watch, similar to you, I don't really watch podcasts.
Yeah.
But the only time I see people's clips are people attacking you. Your clips are when people are attacking you. Yale Jacoby, I was looking this morning.
Who is he?
Just some influencer, if you will. And these are non-influential influencers, I call them. But he certainly is involved he's certainly been paid for some of his tweets.
So this is the part of this that like you see with the Tucker interaction, how this guy is, decent at marketing himself, or making himself likable, an ingratiation, if you will. I find it difficult to believe that this E.L. Jacoby is popping up on this guy's timeline. This Trump social media manager is paying attention to what some random non-influential influencer, as he called him, individual is doing and saying about Tucker Carlson right before he goes on to Tucker Carlson's podcast. No, it's just a smart tactic. And Tucker's a genuine person, I think, but I do think this stuff like this is why people refer to him as a grifter. And sometimes it feels like grifting, to have such a cordial relationship with people who clearly are not telling the truth. It's like if you watch Rogan and you listen to Mike Baker, brother, you're just running cover for the CIA. Like, what? My guy wasn't born in a basement, and I wasn't born last night. Like, come on, man. And on there he'll be like, oh, they didn't ask me what I was going to talk about. It's like, dog, because you sat there and drew out a plan or something, or you have a protocol and understanding about what you can and can't talk about and what kind of narrative you should be running. And also, I'm sure he believes some of that shit, as a lot of these people do. As when you work with something for so long, you become to believe that sort of thing, the idealisms that surround either that agency, that administration, the group of individuals that you associate with. But you can just tell from here that he's using this kind of bridge to get, to lower Tucker's defenses, bring him in, and then flatter Tucker slightly, while also trying to make a point about what he was referring to earlier about social media purchasing and influencers and people paying for social media, all while trying to continue to share the graces of the Trump administration. Like I said at the beginning, it makes sense. I get it. This is your boss. I think it's super important that you pay attention to these kind of tactics. There was one more, I think. Yeah, the one about Fox News.
Then why? Here's a question that I have. I know you're not running a comm shop directly, but
or indirectly.
No, I mean, you're certainly involved in thinking through messages and how to get them out there. Fox News, why the emphasis on Fox News? All these Trump employees, all appointees, all on Fox News. It's got a tiny audience. It's controlled by people who hate Trump, the Murdochs. I know that personally because I know them personally. And they're against his agenda on a core level, but no one ever gets sent out to podcasts. You're the first Trump person who's been here in a long time.
Have you sought out anybody?
Of course.
Well, that's a good question.
But Fox News, it's irrelevant. Why make it relevant?
So the podcast, that's a great question. We had great success with the president going on podcasts.
I know.
Theo and Joe Rogan and yours and Andrew Schultz. And I really like these guys. And they've been critical of the admin on issues. That's okay. I still like them personally. But they don't want to have a lot of the people on anymore. They don't make enough. They don't want to have the president on. They haven't sought out an interview with the president. And I'm sure if they asked, I'm sure he would do it, but they haven't asked.
No, but it's not just about the president. I mean, he is the president.
But also
he's
people like
busy.
the admin. Like, I think these guys like.
No, those requests got shut down. My request got shut down, and I felt like I had been a pretty faithful Trump supporter, certainly like a
And you
lion-hearted
sought an
advocate.
interview with the president.
No. I just call him directly for
Right.
that. But like, the secretary of awesomeness or whatever, you have all these secretaries in charge of things. Like, get him on. Nope, can't do it. And I'm not whining. It was fine. My life turned out okay. But I don't understand the emphasis on Fox News. Like,
Well, sometimes it's the only platform that will have us on.
dude, that is not true.
I mean, or CNN, for example,
Fox
refused to have Stephen Miller on.
Okay,
Right.
That's CNN.
And-
but
and
again,
so-
who cares about CNN? 9 people watch it.
Right. I don't know. I think that if you start inviting people on the show again, maybe they'll come.
But why continue to make? I mean, once Trump is gone, CNN and Fox are done.
Yeah.
They're literally done. Without Trump to talk about, no one's going to watch them. They will probably close down, literally. And you know this better than anyone. You're the new media guy. Why keep them on life support? I don't understand when they hate you. They hate you at Fox. They hate you at CNN. MS probably likes you more than those two things. Like, why do this?
Well, it's important to get the message out, and people are comfortable going on Fox, I suppose. And a lot of the administration officials, they have relationships there, so they get booked there.
I think there's some truth in that.
And
It's just muscle
Also,
memory.
a lot of the podcasters, they don't want to interview random cabinet members. Maybe you do, but other podcasts in, I guess, the podcast ecosystem, they don't want to interview a rank and file Republican congressman or a senator.
I interviewed Ted Cruz.
That was a fun interview, by the way. Which
there. Yeah. See, I I just think it's really funny that he's like, well, they have connections there, and they like going on there, and it's just one of those things where like you can tell he knows it's not a good idea, and he can tell as a social media manager that it would be much more beneficial for them to be more prevalent on social media and for them to be doing more podcast tours. Tim Burchett has done some, Anna Paulina Luna, James Tallarico. These people have done the podcast, and their popularity has changed and skyrocketed in a lot of places. Or has gone down because people didn't like their views. Whatever it be, that's the new media. That's where it's at. These guys, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Andrew Schultz, they have large audiences. And if you're somebody like me who listens to even, actual people who pay attention to policy, such as Dave Smith or Daryl Cooper and Scott Horton, any of these individuals would give them a larger audience than what they get on fucking Fox or CNN, and more relevant audience too. Younger people who will follow them through their career if they are someone who still has a career ahead of them. Not a Mitch McConnell or a Bernie Sanders who's probably closer to sniffing the grave than they are, to being able to relate to young individuals. And so it's just one of those things where you can tell they don't want to have to answer the hard questions. And so why go on a podcast for 2.5 hours where I'm going to get asked stuff? It's the same thing with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris didn't go on Rogan's podcast, and they try to do all these stipulations and all this kind of shit for Rogan to do it here and do it 45 minutes and all this kind of stuff. And, they still wouldn't do it because they knew that she would get exposed, which they don't know that because maybe people would have grown to like her. I don't know what her personality is outside of the political stuff. And so Kamala Harris could be someone that people like. A lot of times, I thought it was a really good clip I saw from Bill Maher where he was like, well, I talked to these people, and it turns out they're not all monsters, and that most people are good, as he was talking about liking Marjorie Taylor Greene after they had a conversation and when they got off the show. And, so a lot of these lines and gaps can be bridged, but then what do they campaign on? Once we bridge the gaps, what do we campaign on? And so I find that to be one of the issues that we're facing here. So I just thought this interview was very, very interesting to me, coming from someone of an administration that's trying to run cover for what they're dealing with. And obviously it's a lot of bullshit. It's the same kind of bullshit we dealt with the Biden administration, Obama administration, Bush administration, probably Trump one. I just didn't see as much. I wasn't as politically involved at that time. So yeah, I don't know, man. I like Tucker, but sometimes I think that he lets personal relationships affect the journalistic aspect of what he's doing. And then there's other times where he'll go in and he'll do an interview with Sam Altman and just, create an entirely uncomfortable environment for the interviewee, or Ted Cruz or anybody like that, people he really actually has disdain for. And I'm saying that there should be an uncomfortable environment for an interviewee if they're trying to push propagandic bullshit like this guy is. Whether you like him, know him, enjoy his presence, like he said, all of these podcasters have been critical of the Trump administration, but he still likes them as people. Well, you are a defender of the Trump administration, and you could be highly critical of what you are as a social media manager and a Trump admin cover, and I could still like you as a person. So I think it's important that we separate the people from the responsibility that they have to their job. Whoever Joe is at work is not who Joe is at home. And I like Joe at home, but Joe at work might fucking suck. He might suck at his job. He might not be a great boss. But at the end of the day, I might like Joe outside of that environment. And so it's the same thing. A lot of people say Trump is great, in person, and he listens and pays attention. But I'll tell you that it doesn't seem like he listens to fucking anything anyone says other than, hey, you're doing great. Keep it up. It's like that fucking Family Guy skit or meme. No, it's not a meme, but that little clip from their their Christmas episode.
That son of a bitch! He just turned his back on me, the way reality turned its back on Gary Busey.
How am I doing today, Gary Busey? You're doing great. Good. Then I'll keep it up.
With Gary Busey, where Gary Busey is just out of touch with the reality because of that head injury that he suffered. But anyway, that's this episode. I'm going to be coming at you with a first ever sports episode, so stick around for that. We're going to do the 4 picks that I thought had the most impact, or have the potential to have the most impact, or one sleeper pick that I think a lot of people aren't talking enough about that was in the back half of the first round of the NBA draft. So appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I'll be back at you soon. Later.